It's 6 o'clock, and I'd like to call the regular meeting for the Town of Atherton City Council to order at 6 o'clock. And we were going to have a Pledge of Allegiance first. Okay, Anthony? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of
of
America
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Before we have the roll call, Anthony, I'm just going to make a welcome remark to welcome our newest city council member to the meeting tonight, Bob Polito. He is no stranger to us. He's been involved with the town of Atherton on the finance committee for many, many years, I think almost 10 years. And every one of our sitting council members who have, except for Diana, because she's this is her first year, who has been a mayor or a vice mayor, has served with him on the finance committee. So Bob was elected, nominated by a majority of our council makeup on not yesterday, the day before, on Monday, yes. There were 4 candidates, 3 other candidates, and one of them is with us tonight, Susan Warren, who's very active in our ADAPT volunteer program. Thank you, Susan, for your energy to bring your talents and put your hat in the ring to become a council member. I hope you can continue that interest. There is an election that's going to happen in November 2022, so you have an opportunity. There were 2 other candidates, Stacy Miles, who's on our environmental programs committee. I don't think I see her in the gallery tonight, but she made application, and I hope she continues her interest. And Rose Howe, who's also not a stranger to committees or commissions, also made her application. Rose had been a longtime member of the Planning Commission and the CCAC committee, so she's really contributed a lot. And so I'm hopeful that the interest to be on city council continues for all of the rest of the candidates who were not appointed. Mr. Polito was gracious to fill out Mike Lumpers's remaining term for the next year through November. So with that being said, Anthony, we have a full complement of council members. Can we have the roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Newly appointed council member Bob Polito.
Here.
Diana Hawkins.
Here.
Councilmember DeGolia.
Yes.
Widmer.
Aye, here.
Mayor Lewis.
I'm here. Okay. That welcome to everyone. We'll go on to item number 3, public comments. And Anthony, you want to open that up for public comments?
Certainly can. So for anybody new to joining the meeting, if you've joined by Zoom link, you can use the reactions button at the bottom of your screen and raise your hand. You can also send a message via the Zoom chat to me. The mayor will recognize you and you'll have a few minutes to make comments. This portion is reserved for items that are not on the agenda. And I don't see anybody with a hand raised, but now would be the time if you'd like to do so.
Okay, there we go.
Ms. Warren.
Any member of the public want to say something on anything that is not on the agenda? If it is on the agenda, we'd like to have you reserve your public comment for that item when we reach it. Susan, you'd like to make a public comment?
So I would just like to recommend that whoever is available this Saturday for the city council members to actually come to the communication drill that will be happening at the EAPs from 9 to 10:30 this Saturday morning.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sure everyone has gotten notices in your emails, because I think it's going out to all of the city council members, correct? And if Mr. Polito hasn't been on that list, could Anthony, could you make sure he gets that information?
I'll do that
before Saturday morning? Okay. All right. Any other member of the public want to say something on items not on the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to item number 4, which we are going to pull from the agenda because we've already done that. and go straight to item number 5. We have a presentation, discussion on the formation of underground utility assessment districts. And I'm going to turn it over to our Public Works Director, Robert Ovadia, to tee that up. Robert?
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. There's been some expressed interest in learning about underground utility districts by both our residents as well as the council in terms of ways that we can look at reducing the clutter of overhead lines within the town. Adam Marston from Harrison Associates is kind enough to join us this evening to provide a brief presentation and answer questions regarding options to create an underground utility district or multiple districts as appropriate. In the presentation, he'll go over kind of the steps to form underground utility districts, as well as financing options and information with regards to public outreach and how to plan, as well as how long it might take to create districts. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Adam. Adam, thanks for coming tonight and being available for the presentation.
Thanks, Robert. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you for having me tonight. As Robert mentioned, we're going to walk through a little bit about utility undergrounding, what it looks like to form a utility undergrounding district, and kind of what is entailed in that. If you go to the next slide, please, Anthony. So let me introduce myself first. My name is Adam Marston. I'm a project manager in the Municipal District and Financing Group at Harrison Associates. I've been with Harris for about 6 years now, and I specialize in district formations, impact fees, and other municipal financing mechanisms. I've worked with utility undergrounding in the state of California, all up and down the coast. I've done projects in Tiburon, in Oakland, all the way down to Coronado and Laguna Beach, Newport Beach, and other various locations. So with that, I've worked with all 3 of the major utility companies in California, being PG&E, Southern California Edison, and SDG&E. If you go to the next slide, please. So a little bit of an overview of kind of where we're going to go today and how we're going to get there. First thing I'm going to do is give you an overview of the key steps of utility undergrounding district, what that looks like. Next, we'll talk about selecting a financing mechanism of how we actually going to pay for this project. The third one will be the steps of actually forming the district. The fourth would be for property owners is how do you go about paying your assessment or your special tax? And then the $5 question is, how long does this actually take? So before we get to the next slide, I want to point your attention to the picture on the right here. This is actually one of the districts we formed in Newport Beach. This is a before photo. As we get later on in the presentation, you'll see an after photo that will show all of those lines removed and show a dramatic change in the aesthetics and atmosphere of the neighborhood. If you go to the next slide, please. So the first steps in creating a utility undergrounding district is we need to actually come up with a boundary. It does not have to be a set in stone, and then we need to petition the property owners who are in that boundary. This is typically a process that is property owner led. So at this point in time, the town really doesn't have any responsibilities at this first out, other than providing the form for the petition that would then be circulated to the property owners. So the district boundary that we want to have proposed is going to detail which poles we want removed and showing the lines as well. Then they would come to the town, and this is where Public Works would step in and give a rough cost estimate to say, here's the linear footage of lines. We estimate this project is going to be X number of dollars. And if there's 100 homes, we're going to divide that total project cost by 100 homes to get an average cost for the parcel. So that way, as property owners are circulating this petition, they have a rough idea of what this project is going to cost them. And lastly, a signature page, which property owners will sign under penalty of perjury that they are in support of the district. And if they're not in support of the district, they just won't sign the petition. A successful petition process requires approval of 60% of the property owners in a proposed boundary. And that 60% is based on the size of the parcel. So we're looking strictly at acreage here. So larger parcels have a larger say in whether or not the district can move forward past the petition process. This is a formal process that must go ahead in front of City Council, detailing the number of parcels included, what the approval threshold was from the property owners, and then council has the option to either deny the petition or to move it forward. Next slide, please. After we've gotten to the petition process and council has ratified that petition and agrees that we are going to move forward, the next steps would be going out and hiring a assessment engineer or someone who, a special tax consultant who could confirm the district boundary in terms of, depending on which financing mechanism we're going to go with, that general and special benefit are being spread appropriately if it's a 1913 or 1917 Act district, or if it's a CFD, actually confirming that the boundary and the project can move forward. That special tax consultant would prepare a assessment methodology detailing how the overall project costs are going to be spread on a parcel by parcel basis. You're probably wondering how we do that. Hold that thought for just a moment and we'll get there in a couple of slides. The next thing that would go through is you would work with PG&E on actually designing the project, coming up with preliminary cost estimates, confirming that those original numbers actually are still the case as we get to this point in the project, and going through the meetings with property owners to kind of let them know, here's the methodology that we're looking at, give us some feedback before we actually get to the point of forming the district and going out to bid on the project. So the next thing would be, and these two items are actually switched, you typically would go out to bid on the project first. That way we have a actual bid from a contractor who would do the work, so that we have the actual cost of the project to include in the assessment district. There are agencies that will go out and form the district prior to having the project bid. It typically does speed up the process a little bit. However, there is the possibility that costs could go up, and then there would have to be a supplemental assessment in addition to the original district costs. And the final step is actually completing the project, taking those lines, putting them underground, and then converting all of those property owners to underground panels. Next slide, please. So here are the two main financing mechanisms for utility undergrounding projects outside of Rule 28, which I won't touch on because there's major changes coming to Rule 28 from the Public Utilities Commission. So the most common is the assessment district, which can only fund special benefit. Other funding is needed to pay for the general benefit. So if we're talking about a main thoroughfare or an arterial street, typically there is some benefit to the city or town at large, which would then come from other funding sources. Typically that is coming from the general fund. The cost to the parcels must be proportional to the special benefits received. So each parcel, the assessment engineer will indicate how they are spreading that assessment to each parcel. The approval threshold is a little bit different in the petition process. It is a majority weighted by assessment amount. So if your assessment is $100,000 versus your neighbor's $50,000, your assessment is weighted double theirs. And this is a fixed lien. It's recorded at the time the district is formed. It does not go up, and other than collecting interest on whatever the bonds are. The other option, which is less common only because its approval threshold is significantly higher, is a Mello-Roos CFD. And these are fairly common in the state of California for new homes and other infrastructure as a whole. In terms of utility undergrounding, the process is very similar. There is no requirement to pay for the general benefit. There is no requirement to allocate special versus general benefit. And the approval threshold on this is a supermajority or 66%. If there are more than 12 parcels included in this district, a special election is required. And this sets a maximum special tax at formation, so the cost could actually be less than that assessment amount, but they can never be more than that amount. Next slide, please. So in terms of a special benefit for an assessment district, here are some of the things that we may look at. We look at the benefits received. Like I said, it must be proportional to the benefit each parcel receives, and they cannot be assessed for the general benefit. Some of the factors we look at is neighborhood aesthetics. Is as you're walking through or driving through the neighborhood, how does it feel? Does your parcel have lines on 2 sides? Does it have lines on 3 sides? Or is it just a single frontage? Safety. Do you have poles or lines that could potentially fall on your property, causing property damage or injury to an occupant? Or the other component to this is, are you on a cul-de-sac that you only have one way in or out that could potentially delay emergency responders from reaching your parcel because they will not cross a down power line until it's been de-energized? In some cases, we will look at a view enhancement. This is a little bit more specialized, and we typically only see this in our beach communities or things that really have a point of view. And then also the connection benefit. Is your parcel going to connect to the underground system or not? Some of the considerations that go into determining how significant that benefit is, like I said, the location of overhead utilities, how large the parcel is or how many units are on that parcel, meaning how many connections or meters are there, and will that parcel connect to the underground system? Again, the key points I really want to make sure you take away from this is the assessment in an assessment district does not change over time. They're based on a formula of weighting for each benefit factor. So in the terms of actually spreading the cost we use for neighborhood aesthetics may not be the same as it is for safety. Next slide, please. And how is the Mello-Roos calculated? It's a special tax formula. The tax can change over time, but it cannot exceed that maximum amount. Typical tax formulas look at the land use or parcel size or the development status. So for example, if a parcel is vacant, their assessment will be very low until such a time as they develop, then that tax would ratchet up to fall in line with the remaining portions of that district. Next slide, please. And again, the approval requirements, the Mello-Roos district is, like I said, a supermajority. If you're more than 12 registered owners, it's a special election, and you have to have, like I said, 2/3 of the voters casting the ballots. Assessment districts, a little bit different. You have to have the assessment ballot mailed at least 45 days prior to the public hearing. All ballots must be returned and counted prior to the public hearing. The ballots cannot be opened until such that public hearing happens, and the ballots are weighted by assessment value, and the district cannot be formed of a majority protest. And again, I really want to stress that we only count the ballots that are returned. So if someone's in support, they have to respond saying, yes, they are in support. If they're not in support, they have to respond saying they are not in support. Anybody who doesn't return a ballot, we just act like that vote never happened. Next slide, please. And how do you go about paying your special assessment or your special tax? Typically, the agency will issue tax-free bonds. We typically see these be 20 to 25-year periods. Depending on how large the district is, I have seen this go up to 30 years, but it's a little less common. The issuance cost of these bonds is typically 25 to 30% of the construction costs. Property owners have the opportunity to pay their assessment in full during a 30-day cash collection period. If they choose to pay their assessment in full, it will save them costs in the cost of issuance and financing, and there's no interest payments. Assessments are typically collected on the property tax bill, and they run with the land. So in the event the property is sold, the new homeowner will be responsible for paying that tax moving forward. The taxes can be paid off at any time. All you have to do is contact the city or the town, and then they will refer them to the bond administrators to receive a payoff amount. Next slide, please. And so here's a typical timeline of what a district takes to form and actually get converted over. So the first 3 to 6 months of a district is building property owner support, figuring out who in this proposed boundary wants the project. Do we think we're going to get over that 60% threshold to move the project forward after the petition? Then you're going to circulate the petition. After that happens, we're going to go into the district formation and design period. Design with PG&E can typically take 1 to 2 years, depending on the size of the district. This has been going a little bit faster now that PG&E is actually contracting out a lot of this work to private consultants. And then district formation, after we have the design and the bid coming back, it typically takes 6 to 12 months because we have to meet the requirements of Proposition 218. Then we move into the construction period, and the timing on that really depends on the size of the district. The construction for a district that has 12 parcels is going to be a lot faster than a district with, say, 200 parcels, because you may have to do some phasing and other portions in there. And then lastly, you have the property owner conversion at the point where all of the conduit and lines have been placed underground, the overhead utilities are still there, property owners would be responsible for converting from their property line to their meter and converting that panel. Those costs are solely borne by the property owner and cannot be included in their actual assessment. So that is a cash payment that would be due at that time as that conversion is completed. After property owners have converted, the contractor would then come back in and they would remove the overhead lines. And that's how we get to a final project. So if we add all that together, you're typically looking at somewhere between 3 to 3.5 years to get a project from the very beginning all the way to completion. Sometimes these projects do take longer. And if I'm working on a district right now that is 430 parcels that we've been working on for almost 4 years now, that we're just about going to go to a vote probably in the next 3 or 4 months here.
So
And
Marsden, on this property owner conversion, if one person doesn't want to convert, then we have to leave the pole up. Is that correct?
typically, a lot of things that would happen in that case is the town has the option to underground their conversion and bill the property owner and put a lien on the parcel. That isn't one of the options, because at that point, the project is going to remove the overhead lines, and a property cannot survive without an electrical connection. So essentially, the town has the option to, one, either complete the work and put a lien on the parcel. Two, they could basically put a condemned notification on the parcel. So there are some options to complete that, but it really is at that point up to the discretion of the town and the council how they want to proceed with those.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. And as you can see on the right here, that's what that looks like in that neighborhood where we removed all those poles. You can see it as a dramatic change from having the clutter that was overhead to now being completely undergrounded. Not to mention, these poles were all in alleys, so just circulation and accidents of property owners backing into poles, damage to their own personal property was greatly improved. Again, my contact information is here. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and if you don't have them tonight, feel free to contact me at any time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Adam. That was really very succinct. A lot was packed into that presentation. I was wondering if we might be able to get that PowerPoint emailed to us so that we can refer to it. I know that our city manager has a lot more facts about undergrounding utilities. At this time, I'd like to open it up to members of the council for any questions that they may have. To Adam. I know Councilmember Wimmer already asked one. That was a compelling question, and I'm not sure the answer was really, it would seem like there would be an easier way to secure that conversion fee up front before at the last minute having a resident balk. Can I ask any council member if they have a question? Diana, Rick? Bob?
I have one.
Okay, Bob, go ahead.
I'm sorry, my cursor's acting up, so I can't get over and raise my hand. But when you say the agency issues the bonds, is that the town?
That would be the town in this case, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So to do this for one street, one cul-de-sac, one small group of homes, it's not going to happen, right?
We've seen districts as small as 12 parcels, or even smaller than that, up to, like I said, properties as far as 400 or 500 parcels at a single time. It is possible, and those bonds are secured by the liens that are placed on these properties.
I guess to clarify what Mr. Polito was asking is the town could segment neighborhoods and do certain neighborhoods that the town feels may need this type of undergrounding worse than, well, for instance, I think there are areas like in Lindenwood and Lloyden Park that the utilities are already underground. So, it would not have to be a town-wide assessment. It could be broken up into smaller neighborhood projects, correct?
Exactly, yes.
But I think just a clarification, unless I misunderstood it.
Councilmember DeGolia, yes.
It's not what the town thinks. This is initiated by the property owners.
Right.
there has to be a group of property owners that initiate the process. The town can initiate the process.
So
And-
what the town-
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Adam.
what the town can do is the council could designate boundaries in the town as saying, this is our priority area for utility undergrounding. So that way that's been communicated to the public. And then at that point, the town could work with property owners and communicate the information they would need to see if they want to form a district. There is a line that any effort that is council or town led, according to the Municipal Act of 1913 and 1917, if the town initiates the process, the town could be on the hook for 50% of the construction cost, which is why we typically see agencies have this as a proponent or property owner led effort. And then after the property owners bring the petition in, that's when the town really steps in with a lot of the, staff support.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Whitmer, you have your hand up.
Sure. I've got two questions. As a follow-on to Bob's question, but getting the bond, the town has to get the bond. Is that not correct, Adam? The town gets the bond.
That is correct. In the state of California, only local agencies and special districts can issue tax exempt bonds.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, and then my
go ahead.
second question.
Yeah.
And so typically when these are done, if you just do First Street, obviously it would only be done for aesthetic purposes, not for security purposes, so to speak, because many streets, have to end up tying to other lines that go to the grid, that go to where the power generation is. So it would not be something that would secure the power to that location. It's just an aesthetic or perhaps a tree falling and fire issue. Is that correct?
It is safety and fire. We do see in most cases, because there's that possibility of lines falling over or things getting blown into lines in high wind periods, that the reliability can be better with undergrounding. The downside of that from the reliability perspective is when something is broken above ground and overhead, it's very easy to see where that point of failure is. Once we've undergrounded it, it takes a little bit longer for the utility company to restore power in the event of they don't know where the actual failure is.
Okay,
So
fine.
it is kind of a catch-22 in the sense that reliability can be increased in certain circumstances, but also could be affected in other circumstances.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hawkins Manwellian had her hand up.
Yeah, I have a number of clarifying questions, and then I do have comments as well. You were mentioning about, and some are easy, so you can just answer them. You mentioned that when it's a main street, that there may be other sources of funding. Would that, obviously El Camino, but would Stockbridge and Atherton and some of those three streets be considered main streets? Is there a criteria?
Typically, anytime we see things like that, it would be identified in the general plan and the transportation element as an arterial or a main thoroughfare that is critical to the town itself. I am not familiar enough with Atherton to truly answer that question. Robert, maybe you can answer that better than I can.
Sure. So we do have several major collectors in town, and I believe those would include, like you said, Stockbridge Avenue. El Camino is a highway, so that is a major thoroughfare. But for example, Alameda de las Pulgas, Stockbridge, Atherton Avenue, et cetera, would be in that range.
Okay, Diana, continue.
Next clarifying question. You have PG&E, AT&T, and Comcast, all who will benefit from our undergrounding, meaning that there's a financial benefit to them because they no longer have to have guys to trim the trees and do those kinds of repairs. Has there ever been a case where that analysis was done and they were requested to put in their benefits of, put in into the pool the benefit they'll reap from doing it?
There is no precedent for that as far as I am aware. In most cases, their operating memorandum with the town has their right to be overhead. So really undergrounding the utilities is the choice of the town or the property owners. So in terms of PG&E, AT&T, Comcast, or any of the telecom companies, they don't really care one way or another if they're overhead or underground, as long as they operate risk. You typically do, as these properties are underground, there is a salvage credit that the district would receive from the utility companies as they salvage the overhead system and recycle some of those materials. We typically see that being approximately 20% of the project costs.
So you're talking about the poles, for example. Okay, that was one of my questions. There's a new infrastructure. I'm sorry, I only have a few more. There is a new infrastructure law coming into place. Are there any provisions in that and sources of funding that we might tap into in terms of shoring up the grid? Because by doing this, we are also shoring up the electrical grid for which all of our future green plans rely on. So do you know of any future grants or anything in the pipe?
There is the possibility under some of the new infrastructure laws that are coming down the pipeline that there may be some additional funding there. I can't speak to any single source as of yet. Some of these are still fairly fresh and they haven't been determined exactly how that money is going to be allocated as of yet. I would suspect that there probably will be some type of grant or loan that is tax exempt or something like that, or I'm sorry, interest free to agencies that could be used for this. But until we get a little bit further down the road, I cannot confirm that there is something available as of yet.
Okay,
thank you.
last question.
Is that okay? Question.
Can we add it to the regular ballot so that we don't have to incur a special ballot fee? Could we have a question on this on a regular ballot?
You could include it on the regular ballot for the actual and that is specifically for CFDs. Typically for the assessment district, when my company does formation of these districts, we will actually handle all the balloting and mail those ourselves, and that will be just part of our overall contract.
Okay. All right. Any other council member have a question for Adam at this point before I open it up to the members of the public?
I have a question.
Yes, Rick.
So, Adam, when we looked at undergrounding the wires along Fair Oaks Lane, where the town's city hall parcel runs, one parcel length, and the estimated cost from PG&E to us to underground that single property length was about $1.5 million. I don't know how that compares to your experience of the costs that have been seen, but if I look at that, there are probably a few property owners, and by a few, I mean a relatively very few property owners that wouldn't have a problem with spending that kind of money, but most people wouldn't be willing to spend that anywhere close to that. And I just wonder what your experience is in terms of the costs on a per parcel. And I understand that parcels are different sizes. And in Atherton, we're, talking somewhere in the range of 100 to 200 feet of frontage on the road. Or it could be on a back fence where the wires are running. But in either case, they tend to be in that 100 to 150 range, just very roughly. Of course, they're all individually, sized. But what is your experience on the costs for something that size?
So I will be the first to tell you, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, utility undergrounding is incredibly expensive. We typically see on a single linear foot of line, it costing anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 for a single linear foot of line. So if we do that math of 100 linear feet, you may be looking at $100,000 to $200,000 for a parcel frontage. Again, the economies of scales really comes into play with utility undergrounding districts. If you have a district of only 3 or 4 parcels, the cost is going to be significantly higher for each of those parcels, say, than maybe rather than 20 parcels. Because as we add a couple more parcels, the costs go down because we have the design contract that becomes a little bit cheaper. Typically, we see construction bids come back a little bit cheaper when there's more work to be done. But for example, using some of our projects in Tiburon, we were seeing assessments somewhere in the range of $110,000 to $150,000 a parcel.
Okay.
And again, that project was constructed last year. Speaking as, you know, where we are, unfortunately, I don't have any projects in Northern California that are at the construction phase to really tell you in your area, really what those costs are looking like. I know down in Southern California, I'm doing a district that we're still right around that point of $110,000 to $150,000.
Okay. Rick, have any other questions at this time?
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to open it up to the members of the public. I know that we have several members of the public here. And I guess if I look at the participant, I see Alex K has his hand up. And that is all that I see.
Carol Flaherty and Greg
Carol's
Conlon.
waving at me. Hi, Carol. And Greg Conlon's waving. So let's do Alex K and then Carol and then Greg at this point. Alex? I can't hear you. Alex? Can anyone else hear him?
No, but he is unmuted.
Are you on mute, Alex? He's unmuted. I see that he's unmuted.
Right.
Alex? Well, let's go on to Carol and Alex can work on his sound. Carol, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Mhm.
Great. So first of all, I applaud the city for investigating this. And a few years ago, I would have thought it was a good idea. I don't right now. I don't think that the residents have any idea what they will be involved in, nor do I think the cost estimate that you come up with will be the cost to the homeowner, because it does not include what has to be done inside their yards. So I had quite an experience at my own home 3 weeks ago when PG&E came out and changed the transponders down our street for a large construction project we have going on across the street. The result was most of the trees in our front yard had to be pruned back considerably. We lost 3 shrubs. We have a 2-foot wide trench going down the easement that we've had there for a month now that has not been filled in. The driveway was broken. We have pavers. And when PG&E left, and by the way, they do not do their work. They have subcontractors for everything. Since we're a builder in town, I can tell you the last 6 years with PG&E have been nothing but sheer hell. When PG&E left, we had no TV, no cable, and no gate access and no intercom. All of the wires were damaged and cut. Did PG&E take care of the problem? No. I had to figure out by calling various other service providers what was wrong. I had to arrange for the repairs. We waited 4 days to get internet, 4 days. Now, in town, many of the homes have the cable and the TV coming off the roof of their house. That's the way it is at my home. It comes off my roof, goes across my driveway. I have a circular driveway, through the front yard, over a fence, an iron fence, and then connects to the utility pole. I have no idea who is going to coordinate and work with the cable companies and the ISPs, if you don't happen to have Comcast or AT&T, because there are other ISPs that are around, to coordinate all that work from my roof across my driveway or under my driveway, through my front yard, and then to the pole that's not going to be there anymore. And I have no idea if you're going to put this new cabling in the easements. If you do, you should also know that in those easements are the security wires, the landscape wires, again, the intercom and the access wires for the gates. Are you going to have to cut across the driveways? So for the house immediately across the street from mine, 4 years ago when the utilities had to go in, they had to cut through the stone pavers in my driveway. They were set in concrete. They dug it up, laid the cable under our driveway. Then they did restore the driveway. It doesn't sound like PG&E is going to be doing that here. So somebody has to pay all this cost. I don't think that that is included in any of your cost estimates, nor do I think that PG&E is going to coordinate all of this. And if we think that PG&E is going to be done in 3 years, let me just share with you, It took us 8 months on a home we built in the corner of Selby and Almondrell just to get the final power turned on. 8
Carol,
months.
I'm gonna remind you, we have a 3-minute limit. There's a lot more people.
Thank you.
And, you know, I could listen to all of your stories. Yeah, and there are, I feel for you on this. I really
I
do.
think
So,
we need a wider study. I
Of
think
course.
you need to consider all of this other stuff in here as well.
absolutely.
Thank you.
This is just a presentation. We're not going to grill Adam. He's not the enemy. He's not, you know, he's come here as a consultant just to present the facts, ma'am. He's not, you know, so don't please, members of the public, don't attack Adam. Alex, let's go back to you and see if you're if you're,
Can you hear me
If I
now?
can, I'd like to
Yes, we
clarify a few
can.
things.
and you have
I
3
know
minutes.
Carol brought up.
Okay, is it, am I, or do you want to let Adam respond or?
No,
Alex, no. I'm
Yeah.
going to let you ask the question.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, just two questions, and one is the PG&E 28 funds that Atherton had, did we end up selling those, or did we, oh, we did, okay, because yeah, okay, that's good to hear, because I hear the POC was planning to take some of it away. And then I was wondering if we get under budget for our quad gate plan, because Atherton was allocated 5 million for that, and the current estimate is about 1.1 million. If we end up having, say, that 4 million extra, can we, you know, George is saying no, we can't reallocate that to any other rail improvements such as
No.
underground poles next to the rail.
And so
Okay.
this is really on the utility, undergrounding utilities at this point.
Yeah, I was just thinking because it's on Caltrain or next to Caltrain property, they are
Right.
in part, you know, responsible for those, but it doesn't sound like that's going to be
No.
possible. Okay, thank you. Those
All
are
right.
my two questions.
You're welcome. Okay, Mr. Conlon, if you'd like to unmute, you have 3 minutes of the floor to ask your questions or make your comments. You need to unmute the computer. Go ahead, Greg. There you go. Let's try it now.
Are we okay now?
Yeah, we're okay now. Good.
All right, because I think 2 or 3 years ago, I was the one that was trying to get Fair Oaks fixed so that there wouldn't be so many hazards for these blind streets turning out into traffic. I know I had 2 or 3 instances that were almost fatal. So I think removing those poles was the goal that I had, but I was convinced by the town staff that the fire risk on these long cul-de-sacs like Walsh Road was more serious, because you got 154 houses on one cul-de-sac, and if there's a fire with a 50-mile-an-hour wind, I mean, you've got a real problem. And I think that Walsh Road would probably be the good guinea pig for the city to start with, if they could get the support of the residents to do that, or if we could do a Mello-Roos and the city would tax everybody to, is that right? Is that what Mello-Roos does? It tax everybody, not just the people that get the benefit? That's my question.
So a Mello-Roos district would only tax the people included in the district boundary. The district boundary can be set at whatever we choose it to be. It could be a citywide or townwide district, which then those funds could be spent at strategic locations in that district, or we can do something a little more localized. So for example, I'll use your 145 home example, that cul-de-sac. You could do a district that only encompasses 145 homes, and they would be the only ones who would pay on that district. Really, the difference between Mello-Roos and assessment districts is truly the approval thresholds that we were talking about earlier, and how we allocate those costs to each property owner.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Any other member of the public like to make a comment at this time?
I don't see any hands, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Anthony. All right, well, Adam, thank you very much. Would you be able to make your PowerPoint available to us? And I see City Manager
I can
kind
distribute
of
it.
raising his hand.
I
George?
guess, Madam Mayor, thank you. What we hope to do after this is kind of encapsulate this portion of the video and put it onto the town's website along with our FAQ that we've had up there for a while,
Mhm.
so that the public can watch this video, just this little section of it, if they have more questions.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, well, let's close this item and we will go on to item number 6 of our agenda, which is the city manager's written report. City manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As traditional, you have a written report in the staff report portion of your agenda packet. Staff is here to answer any questions the council may have. I did meet with the council members individually and answered 1 or 2 questions here or there, but there were no large questions that require feedback at this time unless there's specific ones now.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'll just ask any member of the council if you have any questions that have bubbled up since your one-on-one with George earlier. Seeing none, I'll put it out to any member of the public. If you have read the city manager's report under agenda item number 6, and if you have any questions for him at this time or comments on it. Okay. Anthony, no, I don't see any hands raised.
Nothing, Mayor.
Okay, fine. So let's go on to our consent calendar, which includes items number 7 through 16. And to remind everyone, the consent calendar items are routine in nature and generally considered in one motion adopted by a single vote of the City Council. If there's any discussion that anyone wants to make on an item, it's now your opportunity to pull it for a question or for discussion. So I'll ask any member of the council if you have any items on the consent calendar, items number 7 through 16. And I see Councilmember Widmer has waved at me. Hi.
Hi, I have just a comment on number 12.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and make a comment on item number 12?
Okay, so we have $400,000, and I appreciate the great presentation and the great ideas the subcommittee put together, and I think that they're terrific.
Let's just kind of
Well, I
say.
will. Okay, well, I'll get
Item
to
number
it.
12 is to authorize the release of a request for proposal for professional design services for the Atherton Rail Station remodel project.
Correct.
And which we
Correct. So if I
discussed
could
last
finish
time.
what I
Okay.
was going to say.
Oh, good,
Okay.
good. I just wanted to bring everybody up to date what we're talking about.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry. So, and I spoke to the city manager about it, and that's to fix the $400,000 is to fix everything, design it, get it all set up the way we want it, do the site and do the site maintenance. A quick analysis says $100,000 is going to be what the design is going to be. $200,000 is going to be to turn the thing around and enclose it and make sure it's secure. And then another $100,000 for site work. And so there's nothing really left for doing all the other things. And I remember that the group said that they were going to go out and start fundraising. So my comment was, we've got to conserve cash. So I hope that they would start that soon.
Okay.
Okay, because I think the $400,000 is fully used already without doing anything inside the building.
You're probably very, very right about that. But at this point, we're not spending the money.
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. We're just going out for an RFP for, to.
I got it. George suggested I mention it.
Okay, great. Any
Okay.
other comments or questions from any other member of the council on items 7 through 16, the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'm going to bring it out to the members of the public. Does any member of the public have a question on any of the items number 7 through 16 on our consent calendar? Now would be the time to raise your hand. And I'll go
I
ahead.
see nothing, Mayor.
You see nothing? Okay, good. All right, there you go. Well, I'm going to bring it back to council and I'd like to entertain a motion to approve items 7 through 16 of the consent calendar. Can I get a motion to that?
So moved.
Okay,
Okay,
so we
second.
have Mr. Polito moved and Mr. Widmer has made a second. Roll call, please, for the approval, Anthony.
Certainly. Councilmember Polito,
Yes.
Hawkins,
Yes.
DeGolia,
Yes.
Widmer,
Aye.
Mayor Lewis.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So we're going to go to our regular agenda items, and those are items number 17 through 22. So we'll start with item number 17, which is an introduction of an ordinance adding chapter 18 to which is going to be titled Solid Waste and Edible Food Recovery Waste Recovery to the Atherton Municipal Code. George, are you going to kick this off?
I'll do a brief introduction. This is actually a public hearing to introduce the ordinance. It was properly noticed for that. So once you get there, you can open the public hearing for it. And we have Lisa from R3 Consulting, who I think prepared the bulk of this staff report, and Douglas Kim and Anthony and Robert Obadia all contributed to it. And she has a PowerPoint presentation if the council would like to go through that. But as I met with each of you one-on-one, I did note we do have to adopt the ordinance. It's in its current form. It was something that the county asked that we keep consistent if we're intending to use the county as part of the administration and enforcement. So that's why the ordinance is what it is. And we do have to adopt it and get it enacted before January 1st. So it's kind of on the track for introduction at this meeting, second reading at our next meeting, and then effective in January. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, unless the council has any comments for me at this time.
Councilmember Widmer, yes.
Yeah, so George, based on yours and my conversations when we went over this, while the agreement or the ordinance does have a few minor changes because it was written by the county and along the lines of what Recology is doing, we're doing something different with green waste. Those changes are understood, and essentially this is just going to go ahead and let the county with their health department get the food and repurpose it. And their comment to us was approve it as is without any changes. That's the only way it's going to go, and that's the only way we're going to enforce it for you, right?
Well, it's not their health department that's going to do the food.
Well, the health department has to set the rules for the food to transfer to different locations. But yes, the county's handling it all.
The administration and enforcement provisions. That's
Right.
correct.
Right. Okay. All right. So
Any other council member want to make a comment at this point or a question about it? I had some typographical or grammatical comments that I let city manager know, and all of the rest of it that started with the item number 618 and then went on, there looked like there was a missing sub heading. But if this is the county's deal, I guess we're just going to swallow it. It's a huge amount of work, and I'm really glad that the county is going to be shepherding it and figuring out what it is. I guess as a small town, we are fortunate that we don't have a lot of food services that we have to do all the reporting and everything for. So that was my comment.
There are a lot of other things that we have to do under SB 1383, and the staff report prepared by Lisa does go through some of those, with respect to the organic repurchasing and the procurement purchasing policy that we do inside internal to the town's policies, but those are outside of the ordinance itself.
Okay. Would it be helpful to us if Lisa went through her PowerPoint? I don't know how long it's going to take, but she's here. Everybody want to shake your head and say, yes, you'd like to see it?
if it's short, yes.
All right, Lisa, let's go.
That looks long.
We'll glide through it.
Glide through it. Okay.
Okay, we can jump right in. This is about Senate Bill 1383. I'll give a quick background and then explain the different components that are divided into these categories. Next slide. So just a quick refresher, 1383 is an organic waste reduction law. It includes all the list of organics you see on the right of the slide. It sets statewide mandates, so you're not alone in town of Atherton. The whole state's going to be undertaking this. The goal is to reduce organic waste in landfills and subsequently greenhouse gas emissions. And as part of this, all generators, meaning businesses and residents, are going to be provided organic waste recycling services by Green Waste Recovery. And as we touched on, the Edible Food Recovery Program. And it's important to note this is an unfunded state mandate. There may be some grant funding coming, but this is something largely funded through solid waste rates or other creative approaches we will learn about over the next few years as they come to life. Next slide. This is a quick overview of the schedule. The regulations had set a standard for 50% reduction of organics in landfills back in January, which we did not make. And the new regulations take effect in the yellow box January 2022, at what point the state agency CalRecycle it expects to start seeing compliance, or they can initiate enforcement actions and ultimately penalties. Beginning in 2024, the regulations require that the town take enforcement action for violations or be enforced upon by the state for failing to do so, with the ultimate goal of getting to 75% reduction of disposal and increasing food recovery by 20% in 2025. Next slide. Skip the animation. Thank you. This is just a quick.
Lisa, just as a comment,
Please.
the town of Atherton did make the 50%.
Oh.
I know the state did not, but the town of Atherton well exceeded the 50%.
That puts you in great position for what's to come. So that
Okay.
is a good sign that CalRecycle won't be looking at you on their initial naughty list. So they're looking for people who did not meet the goals to date. That's where they're going to be seeing the red flags to look most closely at first. So
Right.
that puts you in a good spot.
Thank you.
I appreciate one other point of relief is a Senate bill that just passed back in October called 619. And it impacts the initial expectations of CalRecycle with 1383. This regulation has the most teeth I've ever seen in a solid waste regulation. They're not rewarding good faith efforts. They're expecting enforcement and mandatory programs. It does not set a per capita goal, like diversion goal or a town-wide goal. It's sticking to the state goal, but expecting, mandatory services. What the new Senate bill does, 619, is it provides a mechanism to delay CalRecycle's enforcement. If you're worried about meeting certain deadlines, you can go through another regulatory process to prepare a plan for which you're going to comply. And that would come back to council for resolution and submission to CalRecycle before March 1st of 2022. Next slide. These slides are kind of about the contents of the municipal code. So this is going to George's point about all the other things that are required. This slide is focused on collection service. On the left, you see the citation for the code updates, and I'll just kind of go down this list. So all organic waste generators must both subscribe to collection service and properly sort waste materials according to the program. Commercial generators and some large multifamily dwellings, which you don't have, but this is required language in your code, must provide containers and education and outreach for public use or use by employees, tenants, and customers. So when you go into business, if there's a trash can, there should be a recycling can for you to use as well. The town may issue waivers for businesses that don't generate a specific amount of organics or really just don't have space for collection containers. And the town and designees are authorized to conduct compliance inspections, which might mean looking in containers or looking at records. Self-haulers can be instances like landscapers where they're not going to have a collection container that they're using. They're going to put the material in their own truck and drive it to the appropriate facility. So this just sets those requirements that they must use appropriate facilities for recycling or disposal. Next slide. These are the two categories of edible food recovery requirements. One is that specific types of commercial businesses called commercial edible food generators need to actually formally contract with a recovery agency. That could be an organization or a service or a food bank. And they need to keep records of those donations. And that the receiving entities, the recovery organizations that are located in the town, need to keep records and share those records with the town so you have an idea of the pounds per month of food being donated. Next slide. This is a snapshot of what those types of commercial businesses are. So starting in January, large food producers and grocery stores need to begin donating their edible food. And beginning in 2022, hotels, large restaurants, health facilities, large events and venues, and local education agencies, meaning schools, will need to donate. Next slide. The final sections I'll talk about within the ordinance or are the Oversight and Enforcement sections. And they state that the town has the authority to use the administrative citation process to enforce these requirements. And that is the biggest thing CalRecycle is expecting to see in ordinances submitted to the state. They want to see that you have the teeth as well. And that collectors, including green waste recovery, must obtain approval from the town for their use of facilities where they take organic waste and keep those records. And the franchise agreement that the town has with green waste recovery does satisfy that requirement. Next slide. So this is a lot of text, and this really goes through the collaboration with San Mateo County. As I heard a few of you say, you are actually incredibly lucky to have this kind of support. Not all jurisdictions have support from both their hauler or any regional agencies or their county. So the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors approved the introduction of their ordinances yesterday. The town and the county will collaborate to provide outreach and education to generators, each taking kind of different roles in what they're doing to get it all covered. And the town and the county are also collaborating to figure out how to meet these requirements to close the loop. So the state is requiring that jurisdictions purchase organic waste products to help spur the market for those demands. And really finding a place for that compost to go is actually challenging and sometimes requires creativity and engineering. So a lot of great minds are on that task. The county will plan a capacity study that looks to plan and secure access for recycling and food recovery facilities and the edible food recovery coordination with the town. County is also monitoring compliance and conducting complaint-based inspections for the edible food recovery program, which is absolutely wonderful. They have more than the expertise to do that. Most of Northern California has been looking at their program already, so you're very lucky. The town and green waste recovery are discussing who's going to take on what roles to monitor the compliance and manage those waivers for organic service. And everyone is going to keep like the most extensive records you've ever seen of all these programs, activities, and purchases, because the state can audit them with a 10-day notice request. And then annually, the town will have to report compliance to the state. And in fact, next year, the town will have to report twice.
So Lisa, on the keeping track of organics,
Yeah.
Not food organics, I understand that, but we have a myriad of gardeners that go around and they do work in Atherton, Menlo Park, whatever. Some may choose to go down to green waste where we get credit for those. Others will just go up to San Carlos and dump it off at Recology, which they're allowed to do up at the processing plant up there run by the SBWMA. How are we going to allocate those green? I didn't see, and I brought this up in the agreement. It's not clear how all that's going to be monitored and how all that's going to be allocated out.
Yes. So they are required to keep records which are subject to inspection at your request at any time. So what that does is that sets up the framework for the town to decide how involved they want to be in auditing those records. If you want to request them quarterly, you can do that. If you want to request them annually, you can do that. So it's a lot of administrative time to track who each of those landscapers is and get their information. Another good way to do it is to request it from like the organic waste generators. So when you're visiting a multifamily and they tell you we have a landscaper, to request that contact information at that time. That's how a lot of jurisdictions are doing it. Some other jurisdictions are discussing putting together online reporting portals and requiring those operating in their town to report regularly through that. So there's a lot of options. We didn't specify one specific pathway.
Yeah, I would expect that we would want to have the SBWMA give us a report of anybody who comes up and they say they have something from Atherton, and Green Waste can do that way too. So the people that are accepting it and redo it and managing, doing the reprocessing of it, they should be the ones that give the jurisdictions the reports.
Yeah.
It didn't say
and-
that in the report. It said that we were responsible for it, which I thought was backwards. But anyway, okay, thank you.
You can request it at any time. Another thing though, is they're actually all of those facilities are required to report to the state now in more detail on a quarterly basis and on an annual basis, where the waste is coming from, the jurisdiction of origin, and if it was self-hauled. So another option is to request it directly from all those facilities, or to request it from the local LEA rep for Cal Recycle. And they're really working on how to make that communication more open. So it's definitely something we can continue to discuss, what's like the most efficient point to get that info. But I think the idea of going to SBWMA and asking as well, but the ordinance does require that these self-haulers identify themselves when they come to that facility, so that SBWMA would be able to give you that info.
Got it. Thank you.
Next slide. Okay, perfect. This very colorful slide is about your MOU with San Mateo County, and you approved that MOU on July 21st, 2021. And the responsibilities that San Mateo County will fulfill are assisting with the education and outreach in response to violations. Cal Recycle has the progressive enforcement timeline for 1383. So for the first 2 years, all violations are not required to receive a penalty, but are required to receive responsive education and outreach. And then there's also some physical inspections and investigations required for the edible food generators, the recovery organizations, and should the public provide any written complaints about non-compliance. And then starting in 2024 and going onwards, this town is required to assess enforcement action in response to repeat offenses. Each of these responsibilities is something that the county has offered to assist with through that MOU. Next slide, please. So the town is currently in conversations with Green Waste Recovery to clarify their role for some of the activities. I spoke earlier that there's ongoing conversations. One of those is the requirement to monitor contamination. There's two options for how that's done in the regulation. One is a route review where lids are flipped and photographs are taken inside a container, or a truck has a camera on it. The other is a waste evaluation, which is more of a traditional bring containers to a solid waste facility and sort out the contents and weigh them.
Our trucks have cameras on them.
Perfect. See, and that's awesome. So then all that's really required to follow up with that is when contamination is noticed, is to provide that education. I do want to call out that the town is not required to provide financial penalties for those audits. So you don't have to randomly audit, residents see contamination and then fine them like Big Brother. Just need to let them know, hey, here's what you can do to properly sort.
Believe, excuse me, I'm just going to interject here, is that there has to be a ton more education and training and outreach almost on a daily, weekly basis to members of the community and the people that manage the waste to know how to separate, know how to minimize the contamination. And because there's just not that awareness.
I agree. And this is, just to echo that, Liz, you bring up a really great point. This is a behavior change, although here we're talking about all the policy drivers, and that's incredibly important for the public to know. The most common question I get from the public when I do any outreach visits or work through this is, what does this mean to me and how do I do it and when? Okay, now that I understand I have to do it, what do I do in my kitchen? What do I do if I'm a taqueria? What if I'm a food truck? What do I do? And so really providing education that is very responsive to the fact that people have to fit a new behavior into their lifestyle is one of the most impactful ways to help encourage
Lisa,
that.
how many more slides do you have, hon?
I'm not sure. Let's see. There are
Four.
three more.
Just four.
Four.
Three more? Okay, that's fine.
Good question, Elizabeth.
Sorry, we're not gliding. All right. these are the responsibilities that the town needs to take on in the future. One is just a desk audit of Excel or database review of compliance. The other is providing the actual administrative citations that cannot be designated to the haulers, that could be designated to another public agency, like in the case of food recovery. But just wanted to make sure that you were aware there are some things that can't be designated. Next slide. And there's two things I just wanted to share that actually directly affect the town staff. One is you are, as the town, a commercial generator. So all of your office buildings and facilities also need to walk the walk by properly sorting materials and having those containers available and reducing contamination. And final slide, Anthony.
It's that compost one that's hard.
Yes, it is. And so this one is about paper purchases. So town staff and any vendors are going to be required to purchase papers that is post-consumer recycled content. And that includes not only printing and writing paper, but janitorial paper supplies. And it's whenever products are available at the same or lesser price or equal quality, but the town can also choose to give preference to recycled products if that helps meet your climate action goals. It's a great way to do that.
We just approved that on item number 9. So
You're one step ahead on a lot of things. So you guys are in great shape and you have a lot of support.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That's a lot of information. I guess I know that our council members have a question. So Diana, you want to go first?
Yeah, I was a little bit confused because at some point you said that the city was going to have to do compliance and then San Mateo is going to do compliance. What happens to the fees if we charge people fees? Where does that money go? Do we get it or does San Mateo get it, or
we don't
where's the money go?
I mean, citations?
Citation fees.
No.
That's what I meant.
Administrative penalties. So for the organic waste generators, those are, I'm not sure what your normal process is, what fund those citations go to, but they're yours to keep. And I'll kick it over to SMC over there to explain how their process will work. Thanks, Jack.
Hi, Jack.
We're going to do a lot of education and outreach
Yeah.
before we ever get to fines. Fines are 2 years away. You only have 3 generators in Atherton, so I don't expect it to be a problem. If we ever fine anybody in Atherton, it will be in conversation and in coordination with your town staff, and you may keep the fines.
Okay. All right. Diana, you have another question?
Yeah, what are you're talking about food recovery organizations? What is that?
A food recovery organization is a new definition set by the state that is any entity that is in the business, profit or nonprofit, of picking up edible food, which is also newly defined, from an edible food generator and then redistributing it for human consumption. It's a food pantry, a food bank, or a food recovery service like a Replay or a Copia.
Good. It's like what we tried to do with the leftover pizzas from the ADAP drill exercise, So, but we gave them to the police. So there you go.
Then you were a food recovery service.
Yeah.
Do we
So go
have
ahead,
those
Diana.
organizations here? Do we have those identified for the city of Atherton already?
I don't believe you have any located in Atherton. You may have some who are operating.
That service up for us.
And we don't have to do that from Atherton. This is something that San Mateo County is going to do.
We chose,
yes.
We chose 3.5 years ago for efficiency's sake and coordination's sake that it made more sense to do one countywide program than 20 individual edible food recovery programs. And the Office of Sustainability took that on.
Okay.
Great.
Rick, did you have your hand up? No? Okay. I thought you did.
I have a
And
quick
Bob,
question.
I would like to have, yes, go ahead.
Only 3 generators. I mean, isn't each school a generator?
yes.
Who are the 3 generators?
According to my list, in the Menlo Park ESD, now if you have a lot of schools in the ESD, then each of them that has an actual food facility on site would be a generator. And then Menlo School and Menlo College, those are the ones that are on the list that I have.
I
There
think
may
we're
be
also
others.
thinking about Sacred Heart.
I don't believe private schools are, but I would have to check the address. I thought that was in Menlo Park.
No, Sacred Heart is not, and it's a private school, and Menlo School is a private school, and Menlo College is a private school.
I have a list that was
What about the
generated.
public? I'm
I have a
sorry.
list. I have a list that we will be sending out to all the generators, and over the next 2 years, we will be talking to them about whether or not they actually are under the regulations. I have no idea today what those are. And those individual ones that I just mentioned don't actually come in. Whether they are or not, we won't know until 2024 anyway.
Okay, very good question, Bob. Thank you so much. Now, Bill, you have a follow-up question?
Yeah, for Jack. Yeah, so similar to Bob's, you know, the public schools, there are a substantial number of public schools here, and they have cafeterias and they also generate food. So we need to include those. They're within our jurisdiction. And secondly, you know, the Circus Club and some of the private schools, at least Menlo and the college, they have cafeterias. So they're producing food for 1,000 people. And so they should be included. My second question to you is, where do we get a list of who the recipients are of this food? So for example, you know, I spend a lot of time up at St. Anthony's, and I want to, you know, I assume that they're on the list. We just want to make sure, and if they're not, they need to apply. So how do we get a list of who's on that list?
So let me just say, Doug Kim just pinged everyone saying that he has the county's list of food facilities, and Sacred Heart is one of them. And so I think that this is such a new program that these lists are really just being created. And so you want to make sure, Mr. Widmer, that St. Anthony's is on the list of receiving at the receiving end. So,
and then I want to make sure that we're getting credit for everything that's happening within our borders, whether public or private schools, because that contributes to our diversion assertion of our goals.
Very, very good point. And like I say, I think that I think, Jack, your Office of Sustainability is going to grow by leaps and bounds. I mean, you're going to need a lot of new employees to do everything that you're wanting to do. Okay, well, go ahead.
Thank you. We have 2 people dedicated to this, and we may be having to hire more.
Okay.
I do want to clear one thing up. St. Anthony's may choose to become a food recovery organization, but the Office of Sustainability and the county, we aren't picking up. If they wish to become a food recovery organization, they would become picking up and redistributing food. They are a wonderful organization.
Yeah, they do that. They get food from Safeway and lots of other places. I just want to make sure that if they have to fill out some forms, I can inform them tomorrow, actually, that they need to get with y'all and make sure they're in the next round, you know, so to speak.
Yes.
All right. All right.
Thank you.
So let's ask any member of the public if they would like to weigh in on this and make any comments.
We have Councilmember
about
DeGolia
it
as well.
You said what?
Councilmember DeGolia, I think, wants to also.
Oh, he does? Oh, okay. I'd called on him earlier and he didn't want to say anything. You're muted, Rick. You're still muted.
There we go. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify, because of particularly Bill's comment about the public schools, it was my impression that we have no jurisdiction over the public schools, and that this, any involvement from Atherton on this ordinance or law will not include the public schools. Is that accurate?
Public schools come in under 1383, not under the town of Atherton, but under the state law.
I understand, but that's their responsibility to comply with the state law, not our responsibility to enforce their compliance.
Exactly.
We have, my understanding, and I mean, this isn't my preference, but my understanding is that we have no ability to enforce the law against the public schools, so that we should only be looking at the private schools and the circus club as the parties that we would have jurisdiction over with respect to this law. Is
Very
that
good
correct?
point. Very good point.
But we want to get credit for it.
Of
I
course.
don't care if we have to enforce it. We want to get credit.
Lisa,
Well-
Lisa Coelho, did you have a comment on that or response? You're muted.
Thank you. I can
welcome.
clarify that. So you do have a responsibility to provide education to the schools about these requirements and to include them in the offer of complying with these services. If they do not comply, you are required to report them to the state for enforcement. So that's correct. You don't fine them.
And do we get credit for them per Bill's comment?
Yes, if they do participate, count those numbers.
Right.
Good. Okay. And when you say those schools, you're talking about the private schools, not the public schools.
No, she's talking about the public. schools.
Talking about the public schools.
Oh, also, okay.
Yeah.
All the schools, yeah.
Okay.
And they're only at 60% diversion right now. We need to get them up.
Yeah. So, and we can get into kind of more details about that. But yes, your public schools are not subject to your franchise agreement. They get regulated by the state. You offer them the service. Your private schools, there's some more gray area on being able to enforce on them as they are commercial generators.
Okay. Well, we need more education about that ourselves. So
Yeah, we can provide more
and
details.
as this continues to roll out, I'm sure we will be brought up to speed often on it. Okay. Did any member of the public have a question for?
I don't see any hands, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Lisa, for your PowerPoint presentation. It was very well done, organized, and it was really well delivered. Thank you very much. So let's see, we are on item number 17, correct?
Yes.
And so this was our first reading of this. We've conducted our public hearing. This is our first reading by title only, and it will come back to us in December for a second reading and approval. Correct, George?
That is correct, but you do need a motion to introduce and waive reading.
Oh,
We
okay.
haven't had public comments yet.
We
Well, I
opened
asked
up
for
the
public
comment
comments.
and there were none.
I did.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes, yeah. So, okay, I'll make the motion that we introduce this ordinance first reading for, to add a chapter number 18, solid waste and edible food recovery.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please, Anthony.
Yeah. Councilmember Polito,
Yes.
Hawkins,
Yes,
DeGolia,
Yes.
Widmer,
Aye.
and Mayor Lewis.
Yes, aye.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 18 is, I'm going to turn it over to our Public Works Director, Robert Ovadia, to talk about our tree replacements on Tuscaloosa and Mount Vernon.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. As you know, back in April, the City Council approved the removal of a couple of median trees, one on Tuscaloosa Avenue and the other on Mount Vernon. Prior to removal, there was public outreach and coordination with the residents with the intent of replacing the trees. And at the September 15th meeting, the council considered the replacement of those trees and asked staff to reach out to property owners and discuss the possibility of increasing some of the size of the trees if they were willing to fund it. Sally Bentz, our arborist, who's on the line today, did do the outreach and talk to the residents of both Tuscaloosa and Mount Vernon. In our assessment on Tuscaloosa, it was determined that to increase the size of the tree, we'd have to actually remove and reconstruct the median at a larger size. And so the cost of that would be a lot higher in addition to the cost of the trees and bringing that in. And in meeting with the property owner that was most interested in increasing that size, she was satisfied with staff's efforts and agreed with the determination that the 60-inch box size would be best. It's important to note that about 2 feet or so away from the edge of the median is a sewer line. And so we're also concerned about increasing the size of that tree with potential impacts to the adjacent sewer line. On Mount Vernon Lane, with the tree being planted on the side of the road, the residents came together and are ready to contribute the funds needed for increasing the size of the tree, and the property owner in which the tree would be planted in front of has agreed to take on the maintenance of that tree. And so with that, we're recommending approval of replacement of the tree on Tuscaloosa with a 60-inch box, that the council accept the donation from the property owners on Mount Vernon to fund the replacement of the tree at a 72-inch box size.
Okay, thank you very much. Sally, do you want to add anything to that before I open it up to council for questions?
Nothing to add.
Okay, thank you very much. Any member of the council have a question for Robert or Sally about the trees on Tuscaloosa and Mount Vernon? Rick, yes.
Just to clarify, the cost for the difference for the tree on Mount Vernon is approximately $16,000.
So the highest amount it will be is $12,000. I don't have an exact price right now because I don't know if a crane will be required. But for the larger tree, it's going to be $4,000 to $6,000, and then another $4,000 to $6,000 for the crane.
I see.
So my understanding is that it's that residents on Mount Vernon have pledged up to $16,000.
Right.
And so that's what we're going to accept their donation. And if it's less than that, they would not have to go up to that amount, correct?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Any other questions at this point? I'll open it up to the public for any questions or comments on this issue. Okay, bring it back to council. I guess my comment
We do have
was,
a public comment. I'm sorry.
Oh, we do?
Kerrigan.
I'm sorry. Kerrigan?
Hi.
Hi, sorry I didn't see your hand
That's okay.
raised. I'm sorry.
That's all right. So I read the report about the median, which it sounds like there's no discussion about the size of the tree, given the limitations, the sewer, the road width. But I am still very concerned about the median. When the old tree was taken out and the new tree was put in, the median was reconstructed, the way it was structured, it just allows cars to whip around the median a lot more than in the old days. And so my goal now, since we can't increase the size of the tree, is to, number one, protect whatever tree is going to go in there, have it be safe, and maintain the, kind of effect of slowing down traffic on our street with that median. And the way it's constructed now, it's just really inferior to the old median that we had there, which was more of like a diamond. What's that shape called? When it goes like that, rather than
diamond.
Yeah, kind of a diamond. Now it's like this, and cars and trucks just whip around it. And I've talked to some of the other neighbors about it. And so I don't know, Robert, you're on the call. I think this would be more your area. Is there a way that we can have input on the design of the median, or are we stuck with this round curb that's there now?
Can I ask a clarifying question to your question? Is it, are cars going over the top of the median?
No, they don't go over the top of it. It's just the median was significantly reduced. The way it was in the old days, there was it was like it slowed traffic down because you came up like this and you had to kind of go around it, and it just slowed traffic down. Now traffic can come up really fast and just zip around the little circle. And, like maybe you guys wouldn't notice, but the residents notice it. And so before we get too, I mean, again, like we've let go the tree, that's fine, it's gone. I think we just like to salvage some of what we had before with the median that we had before, which I think was safer and was better for the street and frankly was better for the tree. It gave the curb on this one's better because it's higher, but the shape of it really doesn't achieve that safety of slowing things down in that area. So
Robert Ovadia, how do you respond to that?
Okay, so I'm gonna say that I'm assuming you're talking about Tuscaloosa.
Yes.
Is that correct?
yes, yes.
Okay, so right now, the median is almost flush with the roadway. And it didn't really, I'm gonna say, protect the tree very much. There was a delineator in front of it. Our intent is to rebuild and raise that median so that it provides the protection that you're talking about around the tree, as well as provides more of a fixed object that residents will have to navigate around or traffic will have to navigate around. And so by raising that median, it'll be about, we're going to put it in at about 6 inches high. In addition to that, we'd be putting in some delineators so that, have a reflector, et cetera, so that the median is more visible at night, as well as potentially some approach striping to channelize the traffic a little better.
Okay, it sounds like you've thought about this, and what's there now in the existing condition is not the new permanent median?
No, we have, I'm going to say the median is almost flush with the roadway and it's actually quite broken. I'm happy to sit down with Ms. Kerrigan and further discuss the concern in our office.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course. I think that's your issue, that it's kind of flush with the pavement. It's not as big as it used to be. And so people are like just going right over it.
Well, actually, clarification, when they took the tree out, they did build up the median. That's when they changed it from the diamond to the circle. But I'm happy to take this offline and talk to you about it separately, since it is a very kind of minutia type thing. Don't have to waste everybody's time with it. Yeah. So should I just call you? I mean, I guess, how would I contact you?
You're more than welcome to reach out.
Okay,
great. I think it also, there's no tree there. And so people aren't trying to avoid hitting a tree.
Right.
Like a traffic circle.
So that might be it, Kane. And I know Bob Polito had his hand up. Would you like to make a comment on this, Bob?
No, I was just curious why the shape of the median changed.
The shape didn't change. The look of it did with the removal of the tree. It's significantly.
Yeah.
It sounds like everything will be taken care of.
I think so. Anyway, thank you very much. Okay. Any member of the public? We're going out again.
I think
No?
Sally has a comment.
Sally, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I received public comment from the neighbor adjacent to the median, Rachel Weststone. She was the woman who wanted to donate money for a larger tree. So we met her out there on the site. And she sent me an email today saying she is 100% supportive.
Okay, good. That's good. Okay. Well, I'm going to bring it back to council. Any parting thoughts on this? If not, I'd like to get a motion to accept the donation from the Mount Vernon residents for a donation up to $16,000 to cover the cost of the larger tree, and to approve the 60-inch box for the Tuscaloosa.
So
We have so moved with Councilmember Widmer and seconded by Councilmember DeGoya.
Fine.
Okay. Anthony?
Councilmember Polito,
I agree.
Hawkins,
Yes.
Golia,
Yes.
Widmer,
aye.
and Mayor Lewis.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you all. And look forward to seeing some new trees. So going on to item 19 is our neighborhood traffic management action plan. And I'm going to give it back to our Public Works Director, Robert Ovadia.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Anthony, can you pull up my 100 slide PowerPoint?
Right on that, sir.
I
We're
was
fine.
hoping you were
It's
not going to
97.
go through your spreadsheet that's making my council binder so
No, I
bulky.
do not have a presentation this evening. As you know, the process that we've gone through for the neighborhood traffic management plan has been going on for a little while. And most recently, we had a full presentation to the council at the study session on October 6th. And in that presentation, we outlined our outreach efforts, the feedback that we received to date on the various measures, as well as recommendations from the Transportation Committee. The City Council provided some feedback on the various measures and requested that we come back with a refinement of mitigation measures with some proposed phasing. And so what you have in the staff report tonight is some recommendations on that refinement. And so, as you know, one of the predominant issues is speeding, and the primary recommendation that we have is to the degree that it's possible to increase some enforcement to the maximum extent practicable, and then begin implementing the physical measures to in a phased approach, not just for budgetary reasons, but to better assess the effectiveness of the various measures. The staff report includes the projects grouped in a phased approach for implementation by measure type. The listings aren't necessarily intended to dictate the order in which they're to be implemented, but illustrative of recommended relative timing. And so in the short-term phase 1 projects that we'd like to implement on a faster term, there are 6 recommended project types listed that we would like to move forward with. The rest of the projects are intended to be listed in the plan, and they would be coming back to the council through the CIP process for future implementation. So in the phase 1 short-term measures, they include things such as increasing the size of speed limit signs to make them more visible to oncoming traffic, increasing the size of stop signs, providing additional speed feedback signs, refreshing high visibility crosswalks, and installation of shark tooth limit lines in front of a couple of schools, installation of striped median islands on Atherton Avenue and on Stockbridge, and installation of temporary speed lumps on some streets. With the installation of speed lumps, our intent is to conduct some public outreach with the residents on those streets to advise them of the intent to install and to confirm with the residents that we would be placing them in front of to make sure that we have their buy-in on the location. And so with that, I'm available to answer. I don't want to go through the entire list of projects. It's quite a bit, but we're particularly interested in feedback on the short-term measures. And if you have additional feedback on the longer range measures, we would like to hear your input. With that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Robert. I just want to clarify that when you're saying short-term phase 1, that would be over the next 12 to 15 months?
Something like that, yes.
Something like that? Okay. Any member of the council have other questions? Bill, yes?
Yeah, so I can understand getting the speed signs maybe a little bit bigger so they're seen at the end of the road as people are going down. The stop signs, you know, the stop signs are very visible on most of these streets, if not all of them, but it's perhaps some of the bushes and trees around them need to be edited. So has there been a study that said making them bigger does something?
With regards to the size of the stop signs, there are some of them that are small and off to the side. And actually, in separate correspondence with the police chief, he recommended that some of the signs be enlarged to increase visibility. And I did drive by them, and those signs did look like they could use some increase, but we can take another look at them
Yeah, I would have more of the speed feedback signs as opposed to making all the signs so much bigger, but that's okay. I like what you've done for phase one. I've got some comments later on some longer term things, but I appreciate what you've done, and
Okay.
this short term looks
Thank
great.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I just want to impress upon council that all we're asking for tonight is feedback and focus on these top 6 areas in the short-term phase one. We're not going to go and discuss any of the future phases at this point.
Oh, I thought you said you wanted feedback on longer term
No,
later, but that's okay. No problem. I'll give it to
Yeah.
him outside
Well,
of the meeting.
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Rick, did you have your hand up?
I have my hand up.
Good.
Uh,
In the participants, can I look to see? You do. Okay.
So I have exactly the same question that Bill had about the stop signs. The stop signs all look the same size to me. Maybe I need to look at them more closely and see if some of them are smaller than others, but I think they're all the same size. And my guess is that there may be some that are positioned in a place that isn't the best place to be positioned, so they could be seen better, either away from vegetation or closer to the road. And if that's true, then we should do that. But I'm not interested in having different sizes of stop signs. I'd rather have them be all the same size. So I need more convincing to support bullet point number 2. I think that the size of the speed limit signs makes lots of sense. You'll be able to see them from further away. And I think that the installation of speed feedback signs on Selby and Stockbridge, as suggested, is a very good thing. I have a question about the temporary speed lumps location. It's like we've really targeted the area coming off of Camino al Lago, between Camino al Lago and El Camino, and Atherton Avenue. And maybe the reason that we do that is and Robert, if you could just clarify it, if you put speed lumps on one street, then it's going to impact the others if you don't put speed lumps on them. So you have to sort of do a group of streets at the same time, or else you create real problems. And that makes sense to me. That's common sense. So I get that. The one street that we've heard about for at least 6 or 7 years needing controls is Selby Lane, going from El Camino up to Selby Lane West. And it's on phase 2. I'd prefer to see that on phase 1. And I, given the prior comment, I understand that means we'd have to do the same thing on Stockbridge because that's the alternative there. So I kind of went through that thought process. And the real question I have coming off of that is, what is your timing? Can you please describe the timing differences in terms of your expected deployment times for phase 1 versus phase 2?
Okay, so just to clarify a couple items. So part of the idea on the temporary speed lumps is to implement them in a rolling fashion. And so we'll be purchasing some temporary speed lump devices that would basically be affixing to the roadway.
Right.
And so we would be able to gauge how they perform, get resident feedback, et cetera. And the intent would be to reuse those. So basically, if the residents are fully supportive, then we're able to take those and make them permanent with asphalt, and then take those devices and move them elsewhere. Similarly, if we get a lot of resident feedback saying we hate these things, we can just pull them out and move them to the next location as well. Okay. And so the idea as indicated is that the short-term phase 1 would essentially we'll be doing our best to fund them with money in the current CIP. Phase 2 would come to you for consideration in the CIP process for
the next
further implementation for the next fiscal year. So we're not looking at pushing it off by 2 or 3 years. It's just a matter of making sure that we not only get your feedback on the implementation, but we budget it through the appropriate process as well.
Hi there.
Thank you.
So yes, Diana, yes, I thought you had a question.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify, one of the items in there is limiting left-hand turns onto El Camino during peak times. Would that, does that entail putting a sign up, or how would that work?
Essentially, that would be putting up signs, having the regulatory authority to restrict it, and then it would be enforced by the police department.
Nice.
Okay, Bob.
I don't claim to know where all these places are and the need for any of these things, because I just deal with my own little cul-de-sac. But in keeping, we always talk about keeping the character of the town, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And some of these measures appear to me to be in conflict with that. Bigger signs and flashing lights and speed bumps and so on. So I can't comment on any individual point in this report, but I think we should be cognizant of that fact as we proceed on this journey. That's all I have to say.
A very good point. And that's one thing that we are constantly struggling with as we try to keep our town the rural character that it is. But we've got speeding traffic and very unhappy residents on some of these thoroughfares, because we've got people that don't live in our town that are cutting through and going from one commute arterial to another. Anyway, so I think that this seems to me, this short-term phase one, I don't know the size, the increased size of the stop signs, and we didn't get really a good idea about where you're thinking about it, but there are some older stop signs that probably are not even as big as the majority of them that are around town. And I don't know how big of a stop sign you're thinking about doing. I mean, is it a 6x6 or something like that? I mean, so we don't have a scale to kind of, but you know what we're talking about. We don't want giant signs.
Yeah, I'm going to say there are a couple of standard sizes that make them easy to purchase and off the shelf, and I can certainly pass that information offline to the council so that you're aware, and I can probably shoot you a couple of pictures of the smaller size signs in comparison to the larger ones.
And again, it's not like, it's something that can't be replaced if it's really egregious, if it's really.
Yeah, I think that the sizes are 24 is the smaller size and 36 inches the larger one.
Okay.
I think there's one in the middle of that too, Robert, a 30-inch one. But to a couple of the council members' points, if there are signs that we're noting and their issue is more visibility, tree trimming and location and things like that, we should adjust that first before increasing the size of the sign as the automatic response.
Okay. Yeah, I know that there are signs that just are not obeyed at all, and some of the reason is the pavement doesn't have the stripe going across it. I'm going to speak from my personal experience at the corner of Emily and Alejandra, because the pavement had been torn up and paved over, and there's no white stripe that goes across that shows people, well, you've got to stop here before going on that stop sign. So anyway, but I'm all for us trying something. I like the idea how they're using the speed lumps as a test case. People are just fed up with speeding traffic down their streets, and they're willing and looking forward to, do speed lumps. So let's give Robert the authority to try to implement some of this short-term phase one over the next 12 to 15 months and see how it goes. Yes, Diana.
I just want to make make it known that the fire department has a set of recommendations that they were talking to us about with the speed lump. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming that everything we do will be compliant with that for our own safety.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So do we need a motion? Rick, you're muted.
I was just going to ask if this is an action item. I think it probably is.
No, it's actually just direction and feedback to staff. We have budget funding already. We just needed some priority support from the council.
I like the fact that we've got some budget.
So
Unless you want to make a specific change.
well, I'm fine with it, but I think that before there's any increase in the size of the stop signs, you should come to us with what the size is and what the change would
And
be.
where,
It's not something I want to support at this point.
well, yeah, we don't want giant signs everywhere.
Well, no, I don't want to support a change in the size of the stop signs without having more information.
And I don't think they're talking about a wholesale change in all the stop signs.
No, they're talking about certain stop signs that are specified.
Let's have one brought here, a big one and the regular one. Let us see where it is and see what it looks like. And, and then we can approve that portion of it, but everything else seems to be okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So that's enough direction on that item. So our last agenda item is our update on the town center project. Understand we've got some more occupants over there.
We do. The police department have moved into their side of the building. They've got their temporary C of O on that side, both top and bottom floor. The dispatch offices have moved over as well. They actually started dispatching from their location today. Moving the technology over has been challenging and is still challenging and will be challenging over the next few days as we work a number of issues out. The police department parking lot is quite tight as they continue to try to finish the fencing on that for secure fencing. And we've got some design issues that we've got to address and find solutions for. But overall, I'd say it's going very well.
Great. Any questions or comments from council on George's report? No?
I'd say the new town center is like a ray of sunshine through the Holocaust.
There you go.
That's a great observation.
Yeah, I knew there was a reason that we brought you on the council.
Yeah. So, our architect, John Schlittler, he met with us and city manager in the lobby in our two little box chairs, Councilmember Widmer, that we chose.
Yeah.
Those are wonderful. And everybody thinks we need two more of those to create a foursome. But he came and he says, did we just have a meeting in the lobby of the new town center? He was like crying. His eyes were just glowing. It was pretty exciting. So
I move that we get two more chairs.
I do too.
Okay, well, want to take a vote on it?
So
All those in
moved.
favor? It's not on the agenda. We can't.
Oh,
Okay,
that's
well,
right.
put it on the agenda for December.
It's within my signature authority. We'll
Go
manage
ahead
it.
and do it. Go forth and conquer. It's fine. Thank you very much. Okay. Our last agenda item is council reports or comments. And, I would just want to say thank you all. It's a great November. Next week is Thanksgiving. So I hope you all eat a lot of turkey and get fat and happy.
Really.
I've got just a very quick comment. If I could, please, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So in December, I have another one of the SFO roundtables. You may have noticed here that we're having a lot more SFO traffic and noisier SFO traffic coming overhead because the airport is about to put in a new landing and ground-based landing approach that goes directly over us and parts of Menlo Park and also Palo Alto. Palo Alto has asked for support from us, and I do, and I know Elizabeth does, but I'd like to just get a feeling from y'all. They would like to be part of the SFO roundtable, which right now does not include anybody outside of San Mateo County. I believe a voice that was similar to ours would probably be helpful in keeping noise down and maybe making some additional changes, especially since the advocate for noise, Jackie Spear, is retiring or not running for reelection. So we're going to lose a voice there. So I just want to make sure that you all feel comfortable in me supporting and pushing for Palo Alto to become a member, even though they're not part of the county.
So I've been pushing for Palo Alto to become a member since 2013.
Yes,
When they first, asked, and the members of the San Mateo County Roundtable, they objected. Actually, it was a very close vote because one of the old timers voted no, because they said if we open the door to Palo Alto, everybody. But I really
Schneider, right?
So we can't be talking about this, right? We can't be
It's a
talking
report.
about this.
It's a report.
It's a report, but not a discussion, right?
Yeah. So anyway, I support it. I'm going to write a letter. And
Yeah, I was going to say, if you support it, write a letter to the roundtable or to me, and I'll forward it. So we have some support.
Just to report that the Santa Clara County formed their own roundtable with the Tri-County, with Santa Clara, Santa Cruz County, and that is falling apart.
Right, it's defunct right now.
Yes, yeah, they just never could get it going. Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else? All right, goodbye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you,
All right,
Robert,
yeah, you
Claudia.
too.
Thank you, Councilmember Polito.